Welcome to the Social Media Church podcast. I'm Neil Smith, joined by my co-host Aaron Magnuson, and today we're talking about Facebook, the cool, the awesome, Facebook.com. Aaron, what are your thoughts on Facebook?
Man, Nils, you've already seen the episode title. It's is it time for us to get off Facebook? Can you remind me what was the year that Facebook was created, just so we can?
No, I think they just celebrated their 15-year anniversary.
15. So
15.
so Facebook is barely a teenager, and
Yes.
we're already asking the question: is it time to get off Facebook? And I feel like some people have been asking this question for a long time. But yeah, Facebook.com, which started historic in every way. Would you actually quantify, before we start talking about should we get off of Facebook, would you quantify Facebook as like the first true social media, or because I know MySpace was that, but like what did Facebook do that was just so revolutionary?
Friendster, I think, is really defined by most as the first social network. MySpace was the one that first kind of caught mass adoption. And then Facebook basically came and mass acquired, and grew, basically ran a better business model than MySpace. And in many ways, they figured out monetization of their platform before
Right.
MySpace did. And so, I would say, Facebook has had an incredible ride and trajectory. I'll tell you what Facebook though, and what Facebook has done so incredibly well is they have continued to innovate. And some of that innovation has been through acquisition.
That's right.
But what really, they were basically a profile, and everybody
Yep.
could just create a profile. And just like with MySpace, you could create a profile with your top 8 and your music. And,
Yeah. Facebook did the like pages, right? They highlighted, I like the Denver Broncos. I like, the Office TV show. I like all these things.
And I think people saw it as a yearbook for your college, and it was a way to basically set up your page in the yearbook for your college. Well, then they created the newsfeed, and the newsfeed became basically the beginning of algorithms, as we understood it, of our way to better express ourselves and see
Right.
everyone's through a feed. And our news feed was customized to us individually, and that was the game changer of Facebook, and continues to be in many ways for almost every social network. Is
Right.
the power of these algorithms to then feed us content from people's individual profiles. And so that's where Facebook continued to grow. They, obviously keep building product on top of that with groups and pages. And, even early with Facebook, you had to create a profile for your organization. And basically people's pages were the same as organization pages. And then they created pages, and then groups, and then stores, and, and e-commerce, and Messenger. And, there's so many different things that have come out of Facebook. And the reality is they're at, they're massive, and even Facebook was the parent company. Now it's Meta, and Facebook is a product, and you can see this shift of almost like people have been talking about Facebook dying for a couple of years, but Facebook has been denying it based on data.
Yes. Right.
But for
which is good.
time,
Which is good. We advocate for data.
And I've been the one that's been saying, don't abandon Facebook. We're talking almost 2 billion users.
Totally.
And the data point that's changed, and I don't have the exact data in front of me, but
this is big.
You can Google search it, but it's basically like they went from 1.92 billion monthly active users to 1.91 billion monthly active users. The reality is we're still talking about like 20% of the world's population still actively engaged on Facebook. That's massive.
That's massive.
Should you abandon where 1.91 billion people are hanging out? I don't think so.
Right.
I think
but
it is
what's significant though, this is the first time in the history it's ever happened though.
That's right.
So what's significant is the first time in history we've actually seen a decrease in, and what's the metric that we saw like millions
monthly
of people stop doing? Monthly active users.
Yes.
So yes. So we have to hold two things, which is what you're about to get into. We have to hold simultaneously how much is still there, which is significant, but also what is this trend that we are seeing. So continue with your thought, but I just wanted to be clear. What is key, what tipped us off to this, and why we're doing this podcast is this is the first time in the history of Facebook for 15 years they have never seen this. and that is a decrease in engagement, which is unbelievable. Like that's mind-boggling.
And I think those who have been in social media marketing for many years, and I'm old, I'm in my 40s now, I heard MySpace when everybody's switching to Facebook. MySpace kept saying, well, we have 10 times the engagement that they do. Look at the data. The data speaks for itself, and website traffic. And you could look at the traffic was still on MySpace, but we couldn't see the engagement. And I think we all knew it was dying, but data didn't align to that. Now, Facebook, we kind of knew people weren't engaging as much there, but the data didn't align to what we were perceiving. And now the data is finally aligning. Facebook stock has dropped tremendously in the last month or two due to those reports. Now the reality is Meta, now the parent company, owns Oculus. Meta owns Instagram. Meta owns WhatsApp. Facebook is one property of the collective whole. But it is a shift and it is a trend. And I think at the end of the day, what I think it flags for church leaders is, should we keep investing more into Facebook, or should we keep continuing to invest as much as we are into Facebook? So if engagement is shifting, and we already saw that it was in many ways shifting, it depended on the demographic and where you are, but for the most part, it had already been shifting here in the United States. Yeah. And so if the attention is shifting, probably our resources and our time, being our most valuable resource, should also shift with where the shift is happening. Should we abandon Facebook? I think that answer is probably absolutely not for most ministries. But should we begin to shift our attention? I think we most likely should.
Yes, that's true. I forget if we were talking on this podcast or if it was a conversation that you and I were in a separate space. But a great example of this is there was a church that you're working with. And they were wondering, man, we were hearing about what this ministry is doing is so cool. Essentially, they were getting distracted from running their play, which works so well on Facebook. And you kind of counseled them and basically said, hey, look, your community, your play, your demographic is on Facebook. Don't abandon Facebook. Don't abandon the strategies of Facebook. Keep pouring in there. And I think the same is probably true for so many others, where it's like you do have people there. And I'll even say in our context at Shoreline City, this is a conversation that we've been having as well of, well, we want everybody to be watching on YouTube. That's where in our context, that's where we want to build the online campuses on YouTube, and is going to Facebook a like sideways energy. And essentially what we've come to is we know engagement isn't growing there. We know Facebook isn't doing a good job of getting our service out to more people, but it is servicing a community of people where it's like, but it takes no effort to throw the stream out there. So why wouldn't we just keep throwing the stream out there? And I think that's where we've landed for now. But I will say this, any decisions we make in terms of tweaking the content is always going to be viewed through a YouTube lens. And if it's something that doesn't play as well on Facebook, we don't care because we're only going to make decisions for YouTube, but sending the stream to Facebook to service those users that probably would not switch to watching on YouTube or would have 500 questions on how to watch something on YouTube, it's worth it for us to just keep streaming there because it doesn't take any chances. So even for somebody, for a church like ours that does skew younger demographically, we would still be running that play. Now, I would say I would probably be quicker, Nils, than yourself to stop resourcing, sending our resources as an organization to Facebook. I would take this as an opportunity to really start evaluating our strategy, our systems, and I would do the offboarding process now. And figure out what is that for the next 10 years or even the next 5 years is probably more of a realistic timeline in the day and age that we live in, which is a third of Facebook's life. It seems like they've been around for forever. They're just 15 and they're already dying. I mean, we're doing an autopsy on them right now. And so I would start pivoting those strategies right now instead of waiting for, 10 million, 100 million, users to drop off and see those monthly things really start to take a spike. And then I think probably the last thing I would say is you made a good point. You didn't emphasize it, but you made a good point in what you just said, that this is the trend in the US. Now, the stat is global, but what we feel is the US. And there is something important to notice because Shoreline City has a campus, 2 campuses now in Guatemala. Yep. And Facebook is everything it was here 10 years ago for them. They haven't really heard of Instagram. There isn't mass adoption onto Instagram. Yep. It's Facebook. And so if you are a ministry or a church leader and you're thinking more globally, or you have the option to serve as a community, there is an important strategy piece that you need to evaluate of, are we making this decision for US soil or are we making this decision globally? Because it is different.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you, Aaron, I think, and you're in a younger church too, yes. That is generally those people are not even logging into Facebook, much less even checking it here and there. Right. And so I think that it's just really hard to justify expanded investment into Facebook as a platform. And so I think about the times where I've really pushed churches into Facebook. One was when Facebook Live was an option, became an option, and that was being prioritized in the algorithm, and you could reach a lot of new people by being early on.
It was like Reels. It was Reels before Reels. I mean, it was being prioritized huge, yes. Massive, because it was trying to kill Periscope.
That's right. Yes, that's exactly right. And so it was huge. And churches that got in early to Facebook Live saw massive opportunity. Today, you're not going to reach new people with Facebook Live. The other thing that's been interesting is even with Facebook video in general, people have often felt like they got a lot of views on Facebook. Well, Facebook counts views even with no audio. 80% of videos on Facebook are viewed without audio because if you see it in the news feed, it would just autoplay. And if you got even 3 seconds, it would count the video view. And so it was counting a bunch of views.
We might offend a few people, but Facebook was doing their own version of Baptist congregation counting. Is what was going on.
Drove by the church building on a Sunday, got counted, and so that was a reality with Facebook Live and Facebook video. When we tried to compare Facebook to YouTube from an engagement perspective. And then I think we saw Facebook groups is probably the last platform. And I would say Messenger too. Messenger in many ways is its own unique app. But I would say Messenger is something that I am less and less. I was very bullish on Messenger bots a couple of years ago. I'm really not anymore based on the behavior within Messenger.
Bots or Messenger bots? Because this will be something we'll pick up probably later. But bots or Messenger bots?
A little bit of both. But I would say I am a believer in bots for the future, but Messenger bots in particular that can allow you to mass message through Messenger or automate some communication through Messenger or even prioritize Messenger. I think we should be responsive through Messenger, but I don't think we need to be driving people to Messenger. There was a point where I really felt like we needed to move people into Messenger. But then groups was the other thing of that. Huge. Group post had better organic engagement. Yep. Well, that helps if people are actually on Facebook. But if fewer people are there, who cares about organic engagement? And do you want to be driving people to Facebook? And I think what's happening now with Facebook is people go there for a specific reason. They're going there to go to marketplace or they're going there for their group. Where I think the reality is we probably need to maybe even find a better property for our groups if that's where people aren't going to be hanging out as much.
Yes.
Now, maybe Facebook will have a resurgence. I feel like if that was going to happen, it would have already happened. Totally. I do think this is the beginning of a continued decline that we'll begin to see month or quarter after quarter as Facebook shares their insights. Now, I think Oculus is going to grow. I think Meta's other properties will grow, but I do think Facebook as a property. And at the end of the day, if they maintain 1 billion active users, that's an incredible property that they have that we might be able to use, and it might be able to use in certain segments or demographics or parts of the world. But I think practically, I do think it's time for us to just admit that Facebook, and I'm glad Facebook kind of finally admitted it, and they never lied about their numbers, but I think it never aligned to what we were seeing the last couple of years. And so I think it's a reality now. And so those that are saying that let's shift our focus and attention it's time to shift our focus and attention, and the data speaks for itself in that. And so, yeah, so I don't see a good reason to do something new on Facebook. Unless you're building a senior adult ministry, then I think
Right.
Facebook is a great platform
Spot
for
on.
you. But otherwise, or if you're in Guatemala,
Yeah.
in certain parts of the world, that
Yep.
Facebook is the predominant social
Sure.
network. But in America, if you're reaching people under 45
Yep.
or wanting to engage people under 45, Facebook, it seems, is no longer going to be that go-to platform, and it really hasn't been. But I think people keep trying to force, or some churches and ministries continue to try
Yeah.
to force Facebook. And I've been an advocate for Facebook
Yeah.
because the data has, I'm like, there's 2 billion people here. We got to keep showing up.
Yes.
I do think we have to keep redistributing content to Facebook,
That's
but
right.
it's time to make a shift.
Time to make a shift. That's right. Is it too soon to do an autopsy on what led to this? And maybe that's another podcast, and that's not necessarily going to help our leaders with strategy, but it does make me curious, Nils. What would you say was the cause of the disease that spread so quickly?
I don't know, man. That's a great question. That would be a great just podcast one time, to like, what happened. Somebody would say, like, your parents showed up. I still believe the main reason that Snapchat is as popular as it is because parents haven't figured it out. And I
Right.
I spent a couple of years trying to figure out Snapchat, and I was way too old. It just
Yes.
never made sense to me. Yet teenagers are still there. And so
Yeah.
they have found their niche. And I think Facebook, I don't know if they went too wide, if they, and then it's hard to say that they're failing.
Yeah.
They've got 1.91 billion active users. They're doing good. They're looks like they're probably not going to get past that 2 billion threshold that it seemed like they were inevitably rising toward. And
Yes.
so they just have peaked. Now maybe the ship will turn again. But I think, and maybe probably the takeaway here is there's not going to be a platform that's all things to all people. There's not going to be a uniform, like, it's nice. It's nice to have Nextdoor for our neighborhoods, and it's nice to have
Yes.
Instagram for this, and it's nice to have TikTok for this, and it's nice to have Bleacher Report for this. And
Yep.
that makes it hard for us in church communications to engage lots of different platforms in different ways.
Yep.
But that's the way people want to engage. They don't want everything in one place. And the truth is, like, politics, I like politics, but I like that on Twitter. Like, I don't want
Yes.
that in my Instagram feed.
Right.
I like sports, but I don't necessarily want that on Instagram. I want that in Bleacher Report. And
Yes.
so I like differentiating when I'm looking for certain conversations or interactions.
Yeah.
I like going to different places for different things.
That's right. And you think that's probably true for everybody?
No, I think we're all unique and different, but I do think that people's behavior is showing that that's probably what people prefer. And I think some people, like, I have a diversity of interest. Some people really, they don't like, they like Pinterest, and they really just want to hang out on Pinterest, and they could care less anything else, or the internet, but they really like this one thing. And some people, and I'm a social media guy, so I like a lot of different social media. But I think that it is, everyone is wired differently and uniquely. And so I think that's where a platform like Facebook is never going to appease everyone. It sure would make it easier for us as marketers, communicators. And if we could have 100% impression rate on all of our posts with all of our followers, but there is no medium that can do that, or that will ever do that. Or because spammers are going to ruin that, and we're going to try to be on the front edge of that.
That's right.
And we're going to ruin it. And so it just is what it is. And yeah, it keeps us on our toes, and it creates, a lot of fun opportunities for us all.
And we're here to help you guys. So if this is all over your head and you don't care to look at the data ever, we will always give you good data here. Always. And good advice. But Facebook, that's interesting you said that, because Facebook, out of all these social medias, they were the ones that tried to be the one-stop shop, I feel like. And we're seeing that I guess time will tell, but at the moment that did not work.
Yes.
So Facebook, should you get off Facebook? Depends on your context. It depends would be our answer. The more accurate answer would be always be evaluating why you are where you are. Who is your demographic? How are you trying to reach them? There are still over 1 billion people on Facebook, and probably the majority of your congregation is on Facebook in some capacity. And so understand your strategies, understand how to adapt, but also be aware that we always need to be looking and diversifying. And we can never, as a ministry or as a church, put all of our eggs in one basket. You cannot do it. It's not wise. It never has been. It never will be. And so we're here to help you find those other options. We should do an episode on that. Just what Facebook alternatives. Just always be evaluating. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, because even Facebook was not able to acquire every single social media app, but they tried. They gave it a run, and now they're declining. So not dead, but maybe on life support.
Yes.
Not even on life support.
Good conversation, Aaron.
Absolutely.
And
always.
We would love to know your feedback. You could message us on Facebook, but we're not that engaged on Facebook. So, I would recommend going to Twitter or Instagram if you want to.
The last thing I'll share is the only time I open Facebook, this has been true for the past 6 months at least, is to clear the notification badges off of my home screen, because I'm an inbox 0, badge 0 guy. So what I did is I would go in the Facebook app, I would click on the bell, make sure the red went away. And so I've actually just solved that now by not having badges on the Facebook app from my iPhone side. And so I've stopped completely opening that app.
Yeah. So I'm guessing the 64,000 unread emails in my app, my phone might stress you a little bit, but I hear you. Thanks. Thanks, Aaron, for this conversation. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We hope it was beneficial for your ministry. We hope you'll go follow us on social media, connect with us on social media, check out our website, socialmedia.church, for other episodes. Leave a rating or review wherever you're listening. We're so glad to get to serve and support you through this podcast, and hope it's beneficial to your ministry. We'll talk to you again on the next episode.